Hey, it's John at Tinderbox Arts. I'm going to be doing some work on my wife's Can-Am Ryker 900 model, but what I'm going to be telling you, the 600 model should be the same thing. I like a lot of what I see on this bike, but one thing that does bother me are the lights. These are incandescent bulbs in here. They're an H4 style, and in the daytime especially, they're just not very bright. And I think the fact that the fairing sticks over it a little bit and they're pretty low to the ground, it doesn't help either. So I would like to replace these with LED bulbs instead, which are going to be brighter, I hope, anyway. So the bulbs are contained in a housing on both sides, and this part of the fairing, this is called a color panel, can be removed so you can get access to the rear, which is how you get the bulb out. If I open up the storage unit here, you'll see there's some plastic buttons right here. And if I open up the fueling cover, again, you'll see some plastic buttons here and here. Those little buttons are retaining clips like this one. And the way they work is when you pop that button up, it allows these sides here to come in. When you push the button down, it expands those sides so that they stay in place. Now, they do make special tools for this purpose, but you could just use a flat screwdriver. I'm doing this one-handed here. And if I just pop up that little button, I can pull that up by hand now. See how that's up? And then I can just slide carefully the screwdriver underneath, and the whole thing will pop out. And I can remove it like that. So we have one here, one here. If I come down, one here and one here. The bottom, though, down here, is held by a different style of connector. So on this side, I've already removed that connector down here. I want to take this panel out and flip it over to show you what it looks like before I illustrate on the other side. So with everything out, all the connectors are gone, this panel just slides right out. It's really not doing this one-handed. And I can flip it over. And this is what I want to show you. The connector on the bottom here is double-sided. So one side fits in this square recess, and the other side fits in this oval recess. I'm going to tell you right now, there's a high probability that you will break this connector taking it apart. I'm going to show you how to try not to do that, but you may break it. And I think I'm going to take a different tact when I put this back together and not reuse that connector. I'm going to use something different. But first, let me show you how to get this connector out. All right, with the camera balanced here, let me give this another shot. So I'm going to try to push up and then pull this up. But like I said, you may well, that time it came, you may well snap it off. So let me show you up close what this connector looks like. So up close, you can see it has these pins here, and on the bottom, it has some similar pins. What I was trying to do is get the screwdriver in here to loosen the lower ones to get this out. What actually happened was just with a little pressure, this popped off. So if it stays like this, great, you can reuse it. But I'm going to try something different when I put this back together. I'm going to use this stuff, which is called 3M Dual Lock. It's like a heavy-duty kind of Velcro. Now, you may think to yourself, well, look, on a motorcycle, there are temperature extremes, water, weather, all sorts of ugly things. But I've used this stuff on another bike, and it holds up tenaciously. On this bike, I have my Easy Pass device mounted on the side here just with some small strips. And this has stayed on through, crazy extremes of temperature, over 100 degrees, under 20 degrees, all sorts of rain. And so I don't have any doubts that it will hold up and be durable. So when I put this back together on this bottom mount, I'm just going to use this double-sided Velcro. It's actually a different brand, but same idea as Velcro. So I'll put a strip here, and I'll put another strip right here, and I think that'll be enough to hold it. All right, so with those panels off, it exposes the back of the headlight housing, and right in here is where we're going to want to be. So to remove the old bulb, the original bulb, I need to remove this connector, and it's just a matter of getting in there with your hands and wiggling it pretty dramatically. All right, that's come loose. And then that comes loose like that. You see that? That's just the connector. Now, if I just poke that out of the way, if I can, you can see these pins which are sticking out here. That is the incandescent bulb. Again, you can see it's pretty tight space in here, which is going to be an issue when we start putting the LED bulb in there, which I'll show you in a minute. But Before we get to that, I also want to point out this rubber boot right here has some tabs, so I can remove that rubber boot and get that out of the way, I hope. There we go. All right, now if I pull that out just to show you, see? That's just to protect the bulb from water intrusion and dirt and that sort of thing. So for the moment, I can remove that and get that out of the way. And that leaves the bulb exposed here, the back of it anyway. Now if I shine the light in there, you can see there's a white plastic ring around the outside of the bulb. What I'm going to do, there's some tabs here too. What I'm going to do is take my fingers and just turn that. It should snap out. I can only show so much here, but hopefully you heard that snap. So that's the ring snapping out of place, and that's what holds the bulb in. So let me get the ring out. There's the plastic ring I'm talking about. Okay, so it goes in like that. And now I can actually pull the whole bulb out carefully. And there you go. All right, we need to talk about what to look for when buying an LED bulb. Now the ones that I picked here, the company is called Auxbeam. It came as a pair. They are H4 style, right? But you notice that when I put the LED bulb next to the original incandescent bulb, there are physical differences in size especially. The H4 style really refers to this plate right here and how it sits or seats in the housing, okay? So both are the same as far as that. If I look at this one, you'll see, the same tabs, and it should be pretty much the same. But there are physical differences in size. So the rear end here, where the connector goes, it's longer on this one. And the front area here, which sits inside the housing, is also quite a bit bigger. So all of these lights, I think it's fair to say, are made in China. And the LED market has changed dramatically. It's improved, but there are still a lot of differences you need to be aware of when you're buying LED lights. This particular style that I picked has a heat sink, so you can see those lines right there. That's to dissipate heat. Some of these, though, have a fan, a built-in fan, a little tiny fan that usually is mounted in the rear, and that would make the rear much bigger. Do you have room or do you not? That's something you need to look at. So in this case, I picked the heat sink so that I didn't have a big fan sticking out the rear. Another thing to understand is that an incandescent bulb has a filament in it, and the light shines in all directions. The housing is designed to accommodate that. An LED bulb, by contrast, has LED diodes, here on one side, and I flip it over on the other side, but nothing here. So the light pattern is going to be different. Is that a problem? It may or may not be, but it is something to think about. Some of these lights, not this one, but some of them allow you to turn, within this plate here, to turn this so that you can change where the pattern goes. In this case, it is what it is. I don't think this one's going to be a problem, but it is something to think about. And another factor is the color temperature of the lighting. So this gets into a big subject, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but the color temperature of an incandescent bulb is going to look much more orange and usually dimmer as well. The color temperature of an LED bulb tends to be much bluer, so it's going to be in the range of 5,000 to 6,500 K, which is a scale. And that's usually helpful in the sense that it is brighter or appears brighter on the road. But you want to make sure you understand what you're getting when you're buying the LED bulb. It should have a color temperature associated with the bulb. So one physical difference I want to look at is this seating plate right here. On this LED version, I guess it is some kind of metal, maybe a pot metal, but it's thicker, I can see, than the original, which is just stamped steel. If I look at this ring, remember this ring we took out? That fits inside of that stamped steel on the original. And there's a tab here and a tab here. If I looked at the new one and slip this over, I can see, look at that, it does not fit. It's just slightly off. So I'll do this off camera because I don't want to make a mess here, but I'm just going to take a file and just, very lightly file the outside edge there to make that fit into where it needs to go. All right, after 30 seconds of filing the outside edge there, Now it fits in and goes flush, and that's what we want to see, so we can do this. So that really wasn't much of a modification, but that solves that problem. Now let's see if this bulb fits into the housing. Now remember, there are tabs here that we need to seat in the correct place. There is some wiring to move out of the way, and I just want to be careful not to damage the LED diodes when I'm putting this in. All right, now with another hand I can shine a flashlight in there. So that's seated correctly. Actually, the middle pin faces up. So that's in there. Now we can get that plastic ring installed, and that will hold the bulb in place. All right, so there's the plastic ring in place. It's a little finicky, but it works. So that's done. And remember, we have that rubber boot. Now, the inside of that rubber boot fits around the bulb, but it does stretch, so I'm not too worried about that. See if I can get that on there. Make sure I'm happy with the seating. And we'll just slide this over the bulb if I can get in there. Be careful not to bend the pins as you're doing this. It definitely is a little finicky. All right, there it's over the bulb. And then this just sits over the housing and sits. So that's good. Let me see if I can get you a close-up. We got the rubber boot. Here are the pins sticking out. Now I just got to get the connector back on there, if I can fish that out, because I stuck it back in there out of the way. Now this is going to be tight for sure, because remember, the new LED bulb sticks out a little farther in the back, but there is enough room there. It's just going to be a little finicky. I got to put this flashlight down. All right, there it is on the back, and I just need to give it a little push. So that's really not too bad. The only modification I had to make was with that plastic ring, and that was under a minute just with a file. Honestly, you could probably use a nail file if that's all you had. So that looks good, and before I do the other side, I think I'll give this a test just to make sure we don't have any electrical problems. Okay, that lights up and looks good. I know this doesn't come through on camera, but this right side here is quite a bit more blue, and it's brighter for sure. All right, the opposite side was accomplished the same way. And now back on this side, I'm going to put the color panel back on. As I mentioned, I'm going to use that special Velcro here. I'll link to this in the comments. And on the opposite side, you see I have a piece there as well. So let's see how this works. Now the upper pins, remember, they expand at the bottom when this is pushed in. So don't push the pin in until you get the fastener seated. Once it's seated in the right place and you're happy with it, then you push the pin down. So I'll put a link to this brand if you want to try it yourself or pick your own. I do think LED lighting is a worthy upgrade. It's not that expensive, and it does give you better visibility to other cars and trucks on the road.